a teenager turned millionaire, now 42 years old, hiding in a beach house with his son. Outside, Colombian police and DEA agents have the entire compound surrounded. Helicopters circling overhead, assault rifles trained on every exit. His name is Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha. The streets called him El Mexicano, and in about 6 minutes, he's going to make a run for it that ends with his body face down in the sand, his empire shattered and his family destroyed. He built one of the most violent drug empires in history, made hundreds of millions before most people finished college, lived like a warlord in a palace with exotic animals and private armies, and he's about to lose everything because he never learned the one thing that keeps you alive in this game: when to stop. This is that story, born January 14th, 1947. Pacho, Cundinamarca, Colombia. Deep rural Colombia. Farming communities spread across mountains where the government barely existed. No schools worth mentioning, no hospitals, no future you could see from where you stood. This is where Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha entered the world. His family, poor farmers. Not poor like struggling to pay bills, poor like dirt floors and wondering if there'd be food tomorrow. The region was violent, not cartel violence, survival violence. Land disputes settled with machetes, debts collected with threats, authority earned through intimidation because there was no police, no courts, no system. You want to understand Rodriguez Gacha? Understand this. He didn't grow up around sophisticated traffickers or business-minded criminals. He grew up around men who solved problems with force because force was all they had. Violence wasn't taught, it was inherited. By his early teens, Rodriguez Gacha wasn't in school. He was working, smuggling emeralds through mountain passes, running contraband, learning that the fastest way to make money was breaking laws nobody enforced anyway. Most kids his age were thinking about farming or maybe moving to the city for factory work. But Rodriguez Gacha, he had different plans. Here's what made him different early. He was willing to go further than anyone else. A dispute over payment, he didn't argue. He showed up with a weapon. Someone tried to cheat him. He didn't complain to authorities. There were no authorities. He made an example. By 16, he had a reputation. Young, ruthless, reliable if you paid him, dangerous if you didn't. This wasn't strategic thinking. This was instinct. He became dangerous before he became disciplined. The catalyst came in the late 1960s. The emerald trade in Colombia was exploding. Mines in Boyacá and Cundinamarca were producing millions in gems. But the real money wasn't in digging, it was in smuggling. Rodriguez Gacha positioned himself as an enforcer and smuggler. He'd move emeralds across regions, collect debts, eliminate problems, and he was good at it. By his early 20s, he was making serious money. Not millions yet, but enough to buy land, hire men, build a small operation. Then he met the people who would change his life, the Ochoa family and Pablo Escobar, late 1970s, Medellin, Colombia. The cocaine trade was just beginning to organize. Pablo Escobar was building what would become the Medellin Cartel. The Ochoa brothers, Jorge, Juan David, Fabio, were consolidating power. They needed enforcers, men who could move product, protect shipments, eliminate rivals, and weren't afraid to get their hands dirty. Rodriguez Gacha was perfect. He wasn't from Medellin's elite criminal class. He was a rural enforcer who'd proven himself in the Emerald Wars. He understood violence, he understood logistics, and most importantly, he was loyal to whoever paid him. Escobar brought him in, and Rodriguez Gacha didn't just join the cartel, he became one of its most valuable operators. Now, here's what he controlled by the early 1980s. Cocaine processing labs across rural Colombia, trafficking routes from Colombia through Central America into Mexico and the United States, armed enforcement teams numbering in the hundreds, paramilitary groups that operated like private armies. Let's talk numbers. At his peak, Rodriguez Gacha's operations were moving 1,500 to 2,000 kilograms of cocaine per month into the United States. That's not a side hustle. That's industrial scale distribution. His organization generated between $200 million and $400 million annually in revenue. Think about that. A kid from rural Colombia who started smuggling emeralds as a teenager was now coordinating multi-ton cocaine shipments worth hundreds of millions. That's not small-time drug dealer, that's international trafficking executive. But here's where Rodriguez Gacha diverged from other cartel leaders. Pablo Escobar understood politics. He bribed officials, funded social programs, built soccer fields, positioned himself as a Robin Hood figure. The Ochoa brothers understood business. They preferred negotiation over confrontation, deals over violence. Rodriguez Gacha understood war. He didn't want to bribe authorities. He wanted to kill them. He didn't want to negotiate with rivals. He wanted to eliminate them. He didn't want protection. He wanted domination. This made him powerful, fast, but it also made him a target immediately. By the mid-1980s, Rodriguez Gacha wasn't just rich. He was living like a feudal lord. The estates. He owned multiple large properties across rural Colombia, not houses, compounds. One estate in Pacho, Cundinamarca, over 1,000 acres. Main house with 20+ rooms. Private zoo with exotic animals, lions, elephants, giraffes, armed guards patrolling 24/7, helipads for quick escapes, underground bunkers. Another property near the Magdalena River, fortified like a military base, weapons caches hidden throughout, tunnels for escape routes, communications equipment rivaling government installations. He lived like a warlord, not a businessman. The lifestyle. Rodriguez Gacha's wealth was on full display. Custom vehicles, armored Land Cruisers, luxury sedans, motorcycles, jewelry, gold chains, expensive watches, rings, weapons collection, everything from handguns to anti-aircraft guns, private parties with hundreds of guests, live bands, excessive everything. But here's what made his lifestyle different from other narcos. Escobar tried to blend in sometimes, appear humble, connect with the poor. Rodriguez Gacha, no pretense. He wanted people to see the guns, the animals, the guards, the power. Fear was part of his brand. One story captures this perfectly. At one of his estates, he kept a lion in a cage near the main entrance. Visitors, business partners, officials, anyone had to walk past it to get inside. The message? You're entering my territory. I control everything here, including death. That's not security, that's theater, and it worked until it didn't. The spectacle, moments, one of his estates. Rodriguez Gacha threw a party for over 300 people, musicians flown in from across Colombia, food and alcohol flowing for 3 days straight. In the middle of it, he had his men parade capture rivals through the party in chains, not to execute them, just to show them, to prove he could. Then he released them with the message, tell everyone what you saw here. Pure intimidation. By the mid-1980s, Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha wasn't just a cartel operator, he was a force. But here's the thing about ruling through fear. It works until someone stops being afraid. But here's where the story turns dark. Because while other cartel leaders understood that violence was a tool, Rodriguez Gacha saw it as the solution. Let's be clear about what his organization did. Case 1, the journalist, August 1986, Bogota. Guillermo Cano, editor of El Espectador newspaper, had been writing exposés on the Medellin cartel, naming names, publishing evidence, calling for government action. Rodriguez Gacha saw this as a direct threat. He didn't try to bribe Cano, didn't threaten him, didn't negotiate. He sent sicarios to murder him in broad daylight outside his office. 2 gunmen on a motorcycle, 6 shots, Cano dead on the sidewalk. The message? The press isn't protected, nobody is. This wasn't emotion, this was strategy. Kill the journalist, terrify the rest into silence, and it worked. For years after Cano's murder, Colombian newspapers stopped naming cartel leaders, stopped publishing investigations, stopped asking questions. Fear became editorial policy. Case 2, the politicians. The late 1980s saw Colombia attempting to crack down on cartels. Politicians were drafting extradition laws, coordinating with the U.S., increasing pressure. Rodriguez Gacha's response: fund paramilitary death squads. He financed groups like MAS, Muerte a Secuestradores, Death to Kidnappers, and later more organized paramilitary organizations. These weren't defensive forces. These were offensive military units designed to assassinate politicians who supported extradition, murder judges who tried cartel cases, eliminate union leaders and activists, terrorize entire communities into silence. Between 1984 and 1989, paramilitaries funded by Rodriguez Gacha and other cartel leaders were responsible for hundreds of political assassinations, thousands of civilian deaths, the destruction of Colombia's leftist political opposition. One notable example, the Palace of Justice siege in 1985. While Rodriguez Gacha wasn't directly responsible, he funded the M19 guerrilla group that stormed Colombia's Supreme Court, taking hundreds hostage and burning extradition case files. The siege ended with over 100 dead, including 11 Supreme Court justices. That's not crime, that's war against the state. Case 3, the union leader. Magdalena Medio region. A labor union leader named Jose Antequera was organizing farm workers, demanding fair wages, protesting land seizures by cartel-linked paramilitaries. Rodriguez Gacha saw this as communist organizing, a threat to his rural operations. He didn't debate ideology, he didn't negotiate. His men kidnapped Antequera, tortured him for 3 days, then executed him. Left his body on a road with a sign, "This is what happens to communists." Over the next 2 years, paramilitaries funded by Rodriguez Gacha killed over 40 union organizers in the same region. The message was clear: organized workers die. The violence worked. Union organizing in cartel territories essentially stopped. Case 4, rival cartels. When the Cali cartel started competing for routes and territory, Rodriguez Gacha didn't negotiate market share. He declared war. His enforcers targeted Cali operators across Colombia: kidnappings, torture, public executions, family members killed as warnings. One incident in 1988, Rodriguez Gacha's men kidnapped 3 Cali lieutenants, tortured them for information, then left their bodies hanging from a highway overpass. The sign next to them read, "This plaza belongs to El Mexicano." The violence wasn't surgical, it was spectacular. He wanted rivals to know competing with him meant dying brutally. Case 5, the informant. A mid-level operator in Rodriguez Gacha's organization got arrested, faced serious time, started cooperating with DEA agents. Before he could testify, Rodriguez Gacha's people found him in protective custody. How? They'd bribed prison guards to give them his location. They didn't just kill the informant, they killed his entire family first. Wife, 2 children, his elderly parents. Then they got to him, slit his throat in his cell. Guards claimed they saw nothing. Cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. The message to anyone thinking about cooperation: your family dies before you do, and we can reach you anywhere. After that, cooperation dropped to almost zero. Nobody wanted to talk. Community impact. Here's what life was like in regions Rodriguez Gacha controlled. Fear was constant. Journalists stopped reporting. Politicians stopped campaigning. Police stopped investigating. Entire towns operated under cartel law. You paid taxes to Rodriguez Gacha's men, not the government. Disputes were settled by his enforcers, not courts. One former resident of Pacho later described it: "We didn't have a government, we had a king, and the king's word was final." Families fled, businesses closed, communities that had existed for generations were torn apart by violence and intimidation. Children grew up seeing bodies in the streets, learning that authority came from guns, not laws. Teachers taught what the cartel allowed, priests preached what the cartel approved. This wasn't just criminal activity, this was state capture at the local level. The reputation for violence was so strong that even other cartel members were afraid of him. Pablo Escobar, the most famous narco in history, reportedly told associates, "Gacha is useful but dangerous. He doesn't know when to stop." That's the problem with ruling through fear alone. Eventually, you scare the wrong people. By 1989, Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha had everything: hundreds of millions in assets, multiple estates, private armies, political influence, control over massive cocaine operations. But empires built on terror have an expiration date. Here's what started to crack: the government pressure. After years of bombings, assassinations, and terror, the Colombian government finally decided enough. President Virgilio Barco declared all-out war on the Medellin cartel. Not just arrests, military operations. The U.S. provided intelligence, equipment, training. The DEA embedded with Colombian forces. Suddenly, the old playbook didn't work. You couldn't bribe your way out of special forces raids backed by American intelligence. The death of Luis Carlos Galan, August 18, 1989. Luis Carlos Galan, a presidential candidate who'd promised to extradite cartel leaders to the United States, was assassinated at a campaign rally. Gunmen opened fire in front of thousands. Galan died instantly. The evidence pointed to Rodriguez Gacha as one of the key organizers. This murder changed everything. Colombia's government didn't just increase pressure, they made destroying the Medellin cartel a national priority. Assets frozen, properties raided, associates arrested, informants flipped. The walls were closing in, the isolation. As pressure mounted, Rodriguez Gacha's world got smaller. His estates were raided, his labs destroyed, his routes compromised. Associates started getting arrested. Some cooperated, some were killed to keep them quiet. His family became targets. His son was wanted. His properties were under surveillance 24/7. Money stopped buying safety. Fear stopped working. Loyalty evaporated under pressure. By late 1989, Rodriguez Gacha was on the run. The man who lived like a warlord was hiding in safe houses, moving every few days, trusting fewer and fewer people. December 1989. Everything changed. Colombian authorities got intelligence. Rodriguez Gacha was hiding in a beach house in Tolú with his son Freddy. They mobilized everything: police, military, DEA support. This wasn't an arrest operation. This was a kill or capture mission. December 15th, 1989, Tolú, Sucre Department, Colombia. Colombian National Police, backed by DEA intelligence, surrounded the beach house where Rodriguez Gacha was hiding. Over 100 officers, helicopters, assault rifles, no escape routes. Inside, Rodriguez Gacha, his 17-year-old son Freddy, and a small security detail. Here's how it went down. 4:23 p.m. Police announced their presence, ordered surrender. Rodriguez Gacha's response: open fire. His guards engaged police with automatic weapons. Full firefight in broad daylight. Civilians running, bullets tearing through buildings. But this wasn't a cartel compound with underground tunnels and hundreds of armed men. This was a beach house with maybe 6 guys. The mathematics was simple. 4:35 p.m., Rodriguez Gacha and his son made a run for it. They burst out a back exit, heading for a boat on the beach. Guards providing covering fire. They almost made it. Colombian police helicopter spotted them, opened fire. Rodriguez Gacha was hit multiple times. So was his son. Both went down in the sand. No dramatic last words, no epic standoff. Just a 42-year-old man and his teenage son bleeding out on a beach, their empire already gone. Rodriguez Gacha died there. So did Freddy. The man who terrorized Colombia for over a decade was dead. After years of running, it ended in less than 15 minutes. The aftermath? The family. Rodriguez Gacha's wife and surviving children fled Colombia. New identities, new lives, complete disappearance. They've never spoken publicly, never given interviews, vanished into witness protection or exile. Smart, the organization. Without Rodriguez Gacha, his network collapsed immediately. His labs were raided. His routes were seized by rivals. His men were arrested or killed. Some operators tried to keep things running. None succeeded. The Medellin cartel lost one of its most valuable and most violent operators. Pablo Escobar continued for a few more years, but the beginning of the end started with Rodriguez Gacha's death. The paramilitaries. Here's the dark legacy. The paramilitary groups Rodriguez Gacha funded, they didn't disappear. They evolved, professionalized, became the AUC, Autodefensas Unidas de Colombia, and other right-wing death squads that terrorized Colombia for another 2 decades. Thousands died, entire communities displaced. Rodriguez Gacha's violence outlived him by 20 years. The money, Colombian and U.S. authorities seized. Multiple estates worth tens of millions. Vehicles, weapons, assets, bank accounts, businesses, properties. But the bulk of his fortune, gone. Hidden in offshore accounts, buried in cash, lost to corruption, taken by associates who disappeared. Estimates suggest $200 million to $300 million was never recovered. It's out there, somewhere. The streets. Rodriguez Gacha's death created a power vacuum in rural Colombia. Other traffickers moved in, paramilitary groups took control, violence continued, but no one ever reached his level of theatrical brutality again. He was the last of a specific kind of narco, the warlord type who ruled through pure fear. After him, cartels got smarter, quieter, more like corporations, less like kingdoms. The irony, Rodriguez Gacha spent his entire life using violence to build power. He killed journalists to silence criticism, murdered politicians to avoid extradition, funded death squads to eliminate opposition, and in the end, he died the same way his victims did, running, scared, gunned down. The man who controlled life and death for thousands couldn't control his own. Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, El Mexicano, from rural poverty to narco warlord to corpse on a beach at 42. Here's what his story actually represents. Not glorification, not celebration, but understanding. He proved something dangerous. You can get rich faster through violence than through strategy. But he also proved the corollary. Empires built on terror collapse faster than empires built on corruption. Pablo Escobar lasted years after Rodriguez Gacha died. Why? Because Escobar understood politics, bribery, public relations. The Ochoa brothers, they eventually negotiated deals, did short sentences, got out, but Rodriguez Gacha, dead at 42 with his son next to him, because he never learned restraint. He became rich too young, got power before he developed discipline, chose escalation every single time. Let's be clear about what this means. The game is rigged, designed for failure. You can make millions, you can build empires, you can terrorize entire regions. But the mathematics are simple. You either die or you go to prison. Rodriguez Gacha chose death, chose it through every decision he made. Every journalist murdered brought more pressure. Every politician killed made extradition more likely. Every paramilitary operation guaranteed military response. He didn't lose everything because he was hunted. He lost everything because he never learned how to stop. Violence was his only tool. When it stopped working, he had nothing left. If you're looking at this story thinking he lived like a king or he had power, you're missing the point. He had 20 years of wealth. He died on a beach with his teenage son, his family scattered, his organization destroyed, his legacy, violence and trauma. That's not power. That's not success. That's a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake fear for control. The game always ends the same way. Always, without exception. Rodriguez Gacha just got to the ending faster than most. Remember the name, forget the glorification. Learn the lesson, skip the experience. Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, the teenager who became a millionaire warlord and lost everything before he turned 43. That's the story, that's the truth, that's all.